It was like all of this programming just kicked in, and suddenly I was subservient and small. All of these amazing things I'd done in my life, all the space I had taken up, and in front of this man, I became really small. And I thought, what is this? What is this? And he said I wasn't being nice.
This is the Your Next Success podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Carolyn Segal. I am a life-first career coach and strategist on a mission to normalize questioning your career. We explore how to build a career that truly fuels your life. And you will hear stories from people who have navigated big career transitions themselves, so you can create a life-first career and become your own version of authentic success. Deidre Beacham is a speaker and coach who helps women stop performing niceness and start owning who they are. She grew up running a program built for everyone else's comfort, and in her 50s, she finally saw it clearly. In this conversation, you'll hear how she moved from people-pleasing to real self-ownership, found her way back to herself, and now helps others do the same. Deidre Beacham, welcome to Your Next Success. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
Me too. You're one of my new favorite people, so yeah, I'm excited.
Thanks. We are going to get to all of the awesome work that you do today, how you help so many people, keynote speaker, coach, author, all of the amazing things. We're going to get to that, but let's dial it way back if we could. Okay. Where were you born? Tell me, what was life like for the very youngest little Deidre?
I was born in Long Island, New York, and do not remember much of anything there. Very shortly after I was born in New York, we moved to Maryland. I remember very little about that. And after that, we moved to Virginia. I remember a little bit about that house in Flint Hill, Virginia. And then my parents decided we really feel like we'd like to act out being hippies. So they moved to a 15-acre property in the mountains, in Flint Hill, but in the mountains on the side of the Blue Ridge Mountains. And we raised cows, chickens, horses, pigs. We had dogs. I milked the cows, collected eggs from the chickens, rode my horse in the woods. That was my life. Loved my dogs. We had a Saint Bernard, and then we ended up having golden retrievers. And the farm life very much suited me, very much, mainly because I loved riding. The freedom of riding a horse out in the Blue Ridge with nobody to tell me what to do or where to go. And it was awesome. It was the ultimate in freedom. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it was cool.
Did you have any brothers or sisters?
I have a younger sister.
What did your parents do for work that, like, you were able to have a farm and all these beautiful animals and all of that, and to, like, move? Did the moves coincide with somebody getting different jobs, or they just randomly picked?
My mom was a real estate agent, and my father worked in construction. And so he actually traveled to DC every day, hour and a half long commute. And he did that every day for a long time. And then he ended up getting into timeshares. But we stayed in the same place that whole time, growing up on the farm. And yeah, I don't think anything really coincided with anything. I mean, they moved to Flint, but then they decided, I think it was still, they wanted to live rustically. And then they decided, no, we'd really like to live out our hippie dreams. And so we grew up on the farm. So when we moved there was no house. There was a barn, and it just had 6 poles and a roof. And so we lived in the barn for a little while in our tent, and dug a hole in the yard, and that's where we went to the bathroom. And we had this little camp seat, that sat over the hole. That was fun.
Yeah.
And yeah, until my dad built the house that I grew up in. And yeah, so
Wow.
when I say they wanted to be hippies for a bit, that's for real. Yeah, that was the dream.
How old were you
Oh,
when that move happened?
Yeah, that was all, maybe like first, second grade? Yeah.
Wow.
And then the house was built,
Yeah.
and I grew up there. I was there until through my junior year in high school.
Oh, wow. Okay, so now during this time, you're loving being out in nature, getting to ride, getting to do things people only like dream about,
Yeah.
really. Like that was your real
Yeah. That
life. You
was my
got to
life.
go and
Yeah.
ride horses and being with, that's amazing. School wise, how was that for you? Were there any particular subjects that you liked more than others?
Wow. I've always loved, it's going to sound crazy. I always loved,
And did you go to
yeah.
school or there were
Oh,
like
yeah, yeah,
full
yeah. No, we
homeschool it too?
had,
Did they hippie extra
yeah,
credit or
no,
just
no, just
regular?
regular hippies with a home. So yeah, no, it was a public school. There was one school in the county, and that's the school I went to, Rappahannock County Elementary School, and then Rappahannock County High School. For about 4 years, I went to the one private school that was in the area. It was called Wakefield Country Day School, and I went there for 4 years. I think they had a quota of, they wanted to have a certain number of local people as a part of the school. And so I'm sure that my parents got a hefty, what do you call that? When people give you
Discount,
money, when
tuition,
people give you money so you can go to school. Scholarship. Yeah,
scholarship?
I'm sure they had a hefty scholarship. I was a straight A student in elementary school. Ooh.
Of course.
I know that scholarship did not get renewed after 8th grade, which is why I ended up going back into the public school.
Interesting. And so school wise, do you remember like did you like any particular things more than others or was it just like something you had to do until you could go back and ride your horse
I
again?
loved school. When I went to college, I never wanted to leave. I just love learning. Always have loved learning.
Yeah.
I am a fan of science and English. I was one of those geeks that absolutely geeked out on diagramming sentences. I loved diagramming sentences. Oh my gosh, just made me so happy. Love to read. I was insatiable. I used to ride my bike into town, which was not a small feat. It was a good 5 miles into town, up over
And mountains
mountains.
too. Like
And I would ride into town and spend the day with the librarian. Librarian loved me. And she would take me to different parts. When she realized that I was like reading all the most intense books I could in the bottom, she's like, let me take you upstairs. Oh, I felt like such a big girl. We're going upstairs. I've never been allowed upstairs. It's like the adult area to be.
ah.
And she introduced me to J.R. Tolkien
Oh
and
wow.
Ivanhoe and yeah, just so many things. She introduced me to so many things. And yeah, I was a voracious reader. Yeah, and writer. I
That's
used to
awesome.
write constantly. I still write, but I used to write constantly and win awards and all kinds of things. Yeah, love English.
Were there people that lived nearby? Like did you have friends or is it just mainly like your family?
So my closest friend I had, her name was Anita, and she lived, I don't even know how many miles away. But yeah, I'd spend a couple hours riding my bike to her house, and then we'd hang out and play, and then I'd get on my bike and come home. Most of the time, my parents had no clue where I was. It's just the way it was back then. They never knew who I was. It was where I was at any one time. I'd just say, "Hey, I'm going to Anita's," and okay, bye. And I just disappear for the day, or I'd go for a ride on the horse and just disappear. And one of my favorite things to do was to ride my horse into the woods, and I'd have no clue where I was. I mean, there was no way I could get back home. And I would just ride and ride and ride and ride and ride, and then eventually I'd be like, "All right, let's go home." And the horse always knew the way home, so I could go wherever I wanted to,
Oh
and
wow.
it was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Now the parent in me and the anxious person in me is like, OMG, you rode your bike on mountain roads for like 5 miles on twists and turns with like, it's some of those roads cars can barely go on. And
Yeah.
like, I'm sure cars had to pass you sometimes.
Yeah, so it was one school in the county, aside for the private school, that didn't really count because most of the people came from other places, other states to go to that school. So the county
Well,
had one school, and my graduating class was like 70 kids. So we're not talking like a whole lot of people driving down any of these roads. It's more so now because it's become a tourist town. The very wealthy have homes out there, and it's where, if you've ever heard of, I think it's the only 5-star restaurant on the East Coast, which is the Inn at Little Washington. Anyway,
it's interesting.
so It's busy now, but when I was growing up, there was hardly anybody on the road, and you knew everybody. Anytime somebody passed, it was like, "Hey, I know you."
Uh-huh. That's cool. Now, what happened your junior year that I guess you moved? Or what happened
Yeah,
then?
my parents moved, and I got what is it called? It's been so long. I think it's called the Carnegie Program. So by the time I finished my junior year in high school, because the private school had prepared me so much, the only thing I had to take for my senior year was English. And so I applied for this special thing, and I was able to go to college for my senior year in high school. So I went to college. And then when I finished college, I graduated from high school. Actually, before I finished college, I graduated from high school. I still had 2 weeks left in college. It was crazy. I had to go to my
But it,
teachers and go, "Am I passing so I can go graduate from high school?" Yeah, it was really weird. They-
now, was college, I guess, well, I forgot to
Hmm.
ask you, from like your early age vantage point, what did you think about what it meant to be a successful adult or what that looked like? Or was there any particular vision you thought you were chasing?
I mean, you're talking about dreams of, I want to be a fireman. When I was a kid, my very first dream was to be a vet. I wanted to be a vet desperately. I wanted to be a vet. I loved, loved, loved animals, and fortunate, being on a farm. It was awesome. And then my mom did a ride. I think it was a 25-mile competitive ride. And my dad and my sister and I, we were the crew. And at some point on the trail, she fell off the horse. The horse got spooked, and she fell off the horse. The saddle went underneath, and so the stirrups were hitting the horse. Horse got so spooked that she fell off of a mountainside and ended up in a
Oh,
ravine. It's called, well, the Rappahannock River. She was ended up in the Rappahannock River, and the Rappahannock River is just full of shale. And by the time they found her, she was just standing in the water. But by the time they found her, I mean, her legs were destroyed. And when they pulled her out, that was when I decided I couldn't be a vet. I saw that at a very young age, and I can still see it in my mind's eye what
yeah.
her legs looked like. And I thought, oh my gosh, I can't be a vet. If this is the kind of thing you see, I can't do that. I can't. I have too much compassion and love for animals, and I couldn't move past that to see the good I could do in being a vet. It was just too traumatic. So then I thought, you know what I
Yeah.
really want to do? I'm going to be a comedian. I'm going to be a comedian. I started,
It's awesome.
actually, I'm going to be a comedian. I'm going to make people laugh. That's what I want to do, and make people laugh. And then I realized I'm really scared of being in front of people, so that wasn't going to work. So after that, I just had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew that I loved school. And by the time I got to college, I was just like, is there a way to get paid to just stay in school and learn? I don't know.
I loved it too. I was like, man, and because see, school, it gives you a syllabus. It tells you here's what you need to do to get an A. It's structured and you
And you can do
can
deep
do
dives.
that
Oh my
thing.
gosh, I loved doing
Yes.
research papers. Give me a research paper to do. Oh my gosh, loved that. And the etymology of words, how fun is that?
That's, did you ever take like Latin or anything?
Yes,
Like how deep dive did you?
I did.
Okay.
I
Did
did
you?
take Latin.
Where did you take Latin?
In the
Really
private
old.
school that I
Yeah.
was in, I took Latin. Yeah. And I
Oh,
took way too
nice.
many years of French. Yeah. Can't speak it, but I
Interesting.
can understand it sometimes. If you speak really
That's
slow.
cool. When they were teaching us languages, it was way different than how they do it now. Now they go to like spoken language like from the get-go.
Mm.
But back in like,
Oh,
in Latin, you're not going to speak that, but it was like just like conjugation of like
amo
agricola,
amas amat,
agricolorum, agricola.
amatis amamus amat. Yeah.
Exactly. All right. So college just became something that you were going to do. Was it a conscious choice or just like the next level up and that's what you could do? And you're like, yeah, let me go get it done. Or how'd you pick a major? Like, how'd all that go down?
Well, my initial major was psychology, and so much of that was really, now in looking back, it was really just trying to figure myself out. And I really think so many people that go into psychology are trying to do just that.
I have heard that. I have heard that from probably 5 people that I have talked
Yeah.
with in the last year, some of them on my
Yeah.
podcast. Some sort of thing of I went into psychology so I could figure out like what was happening with me, how I was screwed up, how I could not be screwed up, why I was screwed
Yeah.
up.
And I don't know that I was as conscious as that about the choice.
Yeah.
Um, it just made the most sense. They're like, hey, pick a major. I'm like, and so psychology ended up, because I thought, well, that's really interesting to learn about how people work. Because when I was a kid, I always felt like I was different than other kids. I always felt different and it was weird. I felt weird. And I used to I can't believe I'm telling you this. I used to practice in front of the mirror, right? I'm like, because people would always tell me, like you look scowling or you're this way or why do you have that? Why are you making your face like that? I'm like, what am I doing with my face? And so I would sit and I'd practice expressions in the mirror. And at one point I was like, am I some kind of alien? And I've just ended up in this body as a person. And so now I have to learn how to make my face make expressions. And yeah, so I used to do that. How do I look? What does it look? What does my face look like? And so I think psychology was just like a natural thing. It was like, well, because I'm really curious about people. But in the end, I really think I learned a lot about myself. But I went into it
Interesting.
to learn about human behavior because I didn't understand it.
And how old were you when this, like the mirror exercises
Uh,
on? And how did you even come up with that?
I didn't
You didn't
understand because people were
understand?
like,
You're just trying to
why are
get your
you
own.
making your face like that? I'm like, making my face like what? I didn't understand. Did not understand at all. And so I looked at my face in the mirror a lot, just trying to figure out what kind of face am I making, and I would just practice and try and figure out what I'm doing, and so that I could be the good girl, so I could be the nice girl, so I could
Oh
fit
my
into
gosh.
all the things that I was being told I needed to fit into, and it wasn't natural, and so yeah, I guess I had resting bitch face at a very young age.
I mean, you can't help who you're dealing with.
And so I learned how to not have,
Sometimes you got to
yeah,
ask, like, what's happening on your, like, there's two sides to a
yeah.
story. So they're asking you what's up with you, but you're like, and what made you say that comment? All right. So you start college before you graduate high school. Then you graduate high school. Then you're still in
Hmm.
college. And then what? And yeah, did you stay at the same place or
Yeah,
how'd
so
that
my
go
first
down?
year in college was actually at Northern Virginia Community College because they had that Carnegie program. And so
Yep.
after I finished my freshman year, which was actually at community college, I transferred to George Mason University. And I went to George Mason for, I don't know, a year, I think a year. And I was still living at my home at the time. And I didn't want to be there anymore. Did not want to be there anymore. And
Yeah.
I moved to Connecticut, which is where one of my aunts lived. She lived in Kent, Connecticut. Gorgeous little town, covered bridges, I mean, right out of storybooks.
Oh,
And I
yeah.
went to school at WestCon. So I went to Western Connecticut State University. I drove to Danbury and went to school there. Still had psychology as my major. And then after I'd been there for one semester, my car blew up for real. And so
How does that happen?
I'm
Car
not
like
sure.
blow up is a different. It's not like my car died. It's not like my car stopped working. Blew
Yeah,
up.
it
What?
blew up, fire, everything. Yeah, so I don't remember. I really, there's so many things that bad stuff I just kind of like block. And so I know it happened,
Oh, I get it.
but I don't remember
Yeah.
the yucky details.
Wow.
And I came back to Virginia and I think I went back to Mason. That sounds right. I went back to Mason.
You
And
go
yeah,
with it.
my at that point my mom left my dad, and so I lived with my dad for a little bit, and then I fell in love and moved to Florida.
Had you finished school?
No, no, no. When I got down to Florida, I applied to go to Florida Central University, FCU. I applied to go to FCU.
There you go.
And for one reason or another, it didn't work out. Ended up moving my boyfriend, and at that point he had become my fiance. We moved to North Carolina, to Hickory, North Carolina. And then from there, I left him and I moved to San Diego. I changed my major to computer
So
science. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Like, were you also working? Did you choose any sort of like jobs to do, or how did that all work out?
In high school, I worked at McDonald's. And when I went to Connecticut, I worked at Stosh's Ice Cream and Sweet Shop. And that was really yummy. Best ice cream. It was handmade in the back. It was awesome. And he made all these sweets. And that's where I learned that people use different words for different things in different parts of the country. And that was fascinating to me. So I remember the first time somebody came in and was like, yeah, I got a scoop of whatever the ice cream was and some Jimmy's. I'm like, what the fuck is a Jimmy?
Yeah.
Jimmy's black chocolate sprinkles.
Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. Poor
Isn't
Jimmy.
isn't that crazy? Yeah. When I moved back, I went back to work for McDonald's again. And after that, I worked for Giant Foods. While I was at Mason, I worked at Giant Foods, and that was a good job. I enjoyed that job. It was good pay. Yeah, and they worked around my college schedule. So it was great.
That's nice. And then what was the draw to San Diego?
You know, beach blanket bingo. Um,
I'm loving this conversation, by the way. Like, I am fascinated by people's stories and their answers. But this is like, I am here for it. Tell me, Deidre, about beach blanket
so
bingo and how a East Coast girl who rode horses in the mountains had gone down to Florida, just like so casually these things come out. And then San Diego, you're now switching from psychology to computer science, and somehow there's beach blanket bingo. Do tell, how did that get
So
on your
when I
awareness?
was growing up on the farm, my great grandmother was living with us, Jessie Hugg, a horrible woman, and she.
His name is Hug, though. Did she hug?
I don't recall any warm hugs from her. No,
Okay.
it makes a lot of things in my family make sense that was the matriarch of the family. But yeah, horrible person. But she did have fascinating stories. I recognized at one point, I can't remember why. I was still very young, but I recognized at one point that she had value in stories because of the time that she had lived in. I mean, she was born in 1898 and she, lived through the Great Depression and she was living in New York. And so I remember when I was a kid asking her questions. This is relevant to the beach blanket bingo at some point. But we were, I was asking her questions about the Great Depression and being alive during the Great Depression. And she was talking about, walking down the street one day and somebody just jumped out of a, I don't know, 30-story tall building and plummeted to his death in front of her. She talked about what a terrible time it was. And it was fascinating just listening to all the stories. But she would watch Lawrence Welk and she would watch these old movies during the day. And she would watch things like Beach Blanket Bingo. I've always just loved that.
Oh, is that a
It is,
movie?
it's a
I'm
movie.
thinking like there's some sort. Okay,
Beach Blanket Bingo is a
interesting.
movie. And I remember watching it. And she used to watch all kinds of movies with Doris Day. And anyway. And and I remember just being fascinated with, these growing people were on surfboards and there was sun and palm trees. And I just never seen anything like it. And my mom had, again, from earlier, she had divorced my father and she had a one really horrible relationship, and then she jumped into another horrible relationship, who she's with now, and she had moved out to La Jolla with him,
Oh, wow.
and so I thought, well, I'll go out and visit my mom and check out San Diego. I'd always wanted to check it out. Went out there, and I was out for, I guess it was on my second day. I took a drive up to Laguna, which is absolutely stunning, and I drove up the coastline, the PCH, and I got up to Laguna and sat on the side of a cliff watching the water crash into the shore, and I was overcome or overwhelmed with this knowing that I had to move there. Not this is a nice desire or this would be a cool place to be, but you have to move here. So I went
Interesting.
home and I thought this is a really weird thing. And I sold a whole bunch of stuff, moved into this house in Hickory, North Carolina. I moved into this house with a friend of mine, Scott, and it had no heat, no stove. It did have a fridge. And so I learned how to cook everything on a grill. And
But did you have a real bathroom or
yeah, it was a
was
real
there a hole
bathroom.
in the
Yeah, it was a real
ground?
bathroom.
I'm
Yeah,
just saying,
real
like, so it's
bathroom. Yeah,
like you're on one hand, you're like, hey, I
I
can
could
do
do that.
this. It's not a barn with 6 poles.
Yeah,
Got this.
but that was when I
I
learned what
got
a
this.
ceramic heater was. And so I bought my first ceramic heater
Oh,
because that heated the room that it was in. And first time I ever took a shower with icicles on the walls. I got that cold in the house. And but yeah, saved up enough money to move out to California. And yeah, and so I
wow.
moved out there. Yeah, it was an interesting trip.
Okay, so then you go to San
Mhm.
Diego and then you start going to school there, but like, were you now an out of state resident or how did
I
that work
waited until
for?
I'd been there for a year so I'd get in-state residency for school.
Okay,
And yeah,
interesting.
so I went to San Diego State University and then I and then I joined the cult, unbeknownst to me that it was a cult, but I went. So how that happened, let me just share how that happened because that's kind of a weird thing.
Do
Yeah.
tell. And did you finish college? Like, did you get a
No,
degree?
no. Although I've
Okay,
taken
so
at least 6 years of college.
absolutely. Well,
At
we're no.
least
Okay.
six
All
full
right. All right.
years.
So, all right. So do tell the this, and then I joined a cult. Like,
Yeah, so it's kind of weird how it happened, which it should be. It should be weird that you join a cult, and the way you join it should be weird. But
and did you knowingly
no.
join it?
So
Okay.
I had made a friend. I was working for Century Furniture, Hickory. It used to be the furniture manufacturing capital, and High Point is where they sell the furniture. This was in Hickory, and my boss, who I just adored, ended up getting breast cancer. And so she had 6 lumps in one breast and 7 in the other. And I was just devastated. Oh my gosh, this woman's going to die now. And I just adored her. And I went out one night praying to a God I didn't believe in because I didn't believe in God and I didn't believe in, I just thought the Bible is just a bunch of rules for people that don't know how to live their life, who need a rule book, and that it was just a way to control society.
When you were growing up, did your parents have any sort of religious? Okay.
No, but
Okay.
we lived in the little house in Flint Hill. We lived next to a gas station, which was next to a church. And so I used to walk over to the church on Sundays, go to Sunday school. But I didn't like it, so I stopped.
Okay.
But yeah, so I was praying to the God I didn't believe in. I'm like, if you're real, like make her better. Really. Just make her better. And if I mean, fuck. Like 2 days later, she went and got another opinion. Turns out it's just some fibrous thing. She's fine. She's not going to die. And I was
Ah.
so mad. I was
And now,
so
and now, are you
mad
stuck?
because I'm like, oh, maybe it's true then. I'm like, okay, so I'll go and I'll find a church, but I'm not going if you're not there. I mean, if you're real, I mean, I need to see you there, right? I need to see you. And so, like the first few I checked out, they were horrible, just horrible churches. And, just piousness. And so then I had been dating this guy, Lance. I was dating this guy and nice guy. And then I went over to his house one day and I found out, oh, wow, Lance, you and your family are bigots. And I wasn't going to do that anymore. So we broke up.
How'd that come out? Like just conversation, just the things that they
Oh, it
thought
was
was
just so
fine to
obvious. I
say?
mean, just some of the things they were saying. I probably heard the N word at some point. I don't remember. Again, I blocked this stuff out. I just
Yeah.
remember it.
Right.
I just remember that I was horrified and that
Yeah.
I could not be with this person. I just wasn't raised that way. And so we broke up. Anyway, it had been months and he contacts me. He wants to know if I want to go to church with him. What? No. And then one day he was like, "Hey, so what you doing tonight?" See, it was really easy to say no to him for church on Sunday because I was a scuba diver. So Sunday you could get scuba diving equipment really, really cheap. That was like half price rentals. And so I was going scuba diving on Sundays. I was not going to church. So
And you picked this up because of the, like, from being there, or had you ever scuba dove
no,
before?
when I was growing up on the farm, we'd go to this South Wales. It was the name of a swimming pool. It's called South Wales. And I actually was in a inner tube once with a bunch of people, and the inner tube flipped over, and I got stuck under the water. My legs were up in the tube, and the I could see air. The air was right there, and I couldn't get my head, and I almost drowned. And so I was terrified to put my head under the water, absolutely terrified. But the idea of scuba diving was fascinating to me. So I would go out in La Jolla, I would go out to the shores and I'd swim out and I would force myself hyperventilating, just hyperventilating. And I would force myself to go under the water and I'd immediately pop back up because I was so scared. But I eventually was able to get to the point where I was like, okay, I could probably do this scuba diving test because the scuba diving test, I took PADI, P-A-D-I. I took PADI scuba diving. And the last test that you take, at least in San Diego, is they take you down like a good 30 feet down. And then you get in a circle. And then you don't know when it's going to happen. But somebody walks behind you and rips your mask off. And you have to figure out, so your nose is exposed and you still have your regulator in your mouth. They don't take everything away, but I still have my regulator in my mouth, but my nose is exposed, your eyes are exposed. And then they hand you your mask and you have to put your mask back on, empty all the water out of your mask, and then you pass. And you have to do all that without panicking.
How do you empty water out of your mask?
Yeah, so what you do is you lift the mask.
Because you're in the water.
And you lift the mask slightly and you blow into the mask.
With what? With your nose? Or like if
so
your
you're
mouth has a
breathing. So
regulator
you're
in it?
breathing in through. You have to teach yourself how to breathe in through your mouth, through the regulator, and then blow out your nose.
And you have to displace all that
And
water
eventually,
with your...
the air just comes down, and then eventually, you just have this little tiny bit of water, and you seal your mask, and you pass.
Okay.
So that's
All right.
that's why I was scuba diving on Sundays. So one day he called me up and he's like, "Hey, so what you doing tonight?" And it was a Wednesday. I thought, well, that's safe. I'm like, nah, nothing. He's like, "Hey, why don't you come to church with me?" Fuck. Okay. He got me. And he's like, "I'll come pick you up." I'm like, "No, I will drive. I will follow you." Not picking me up. And when I got there, just so many, they were so happy. I mean, it was just like weirdly happy people. But I'll tell you what took all of the weirdness away. Because again, remember, I told God that I had to see him.
Right.
And this man who was a bigot, this guy named Ish, yells to him, "Lance, Ish." And they come together and hug. And I was like,
What's here? What's this?
I think I just saw God.
Wait, God was Ish?
Because he's a black man. He was a very, very dark man from Trinidad. Very, very dark man. And Lance hugged him like he was his best friend in the whole wide world. And it was real. It was real. This bigoted man hugged this very dark man. And it was real. And I was sold. I was like, I need to learn more about this church, evidently. Yeah, I didn't know they had just been on 2020.
Like we're talking the real cult.
Investigated on
Um,
2020. Yeah, this real thing. Yeah. They were being investigated for their indications of being a cult, the control of the members, and the subjugation of women.
Interesting. And so you unknowingly are just going, now you think you see God because this guy you had dated that you decided not to date because his family was bigots just hugged a very dark skinned man. And they're all really happy. And you're like, I don't know, but I think I want what they've got.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a song that's in the, that like, I don't know, in some of the hymnals, and it's be like, and they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love. Yeah. All right. I like it. So it's kind of like, sometimes I'm thinking like, oh, I don't know that, like, okay, outwardly in public, I still don't know that like anybody would know what I believe based on my love. I'm not sure. But it always kind of like just this fascination of like, wow, uh, how could I get to be like that, that somebody would want what I
Mm-hmm.
had or have? Or how could I be so joyful in the midst of stuff? But yet here you go and you experience an entire room full of really joyful people and you're not sure what they have, but it seems like very intriguing.
Very intriguing.
You didn't know it was a
No.
cult. So how, so but you just keep going, then you find you're in a cult, then how do you leave a cult? Like what? Like
Yeah,
how
that's
does
where I
this
met my
work?
husband. So, yeah,
So this guy wasn't your husband, but he led you to your husband, Lance,
no.
husband, right? Imagine what your life would be like if your career aligned with who you are, what you do best, and actually fueled the life you want. At Next Success, we support all ages and stages through career transitions, from students exploring majors or careers to job seekers actively searching or reimagining their next move to professionals committed to self-awareness and leadership growth. Stay connected and explore what's possible at nextsuccesscareers.com and follow Next Success Method on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook.
So I ended up meeting Sean in that church. And yeah, yeah, I was there. I was part of that church for about 8 years.
Oh,
Yeah, it affected a big part of me. Yeah.
and then how did you, or when did you realize something's not right here or that you didn't want to be part of? And was it just you realizing that or you and Sean realizing like, we got to get out of here?
No, Sean really never said anything about getting out of there, but they did. They had a what they called a reconstruction, and that's because the cult leader, Kip McKean, he ended up either being forced out or I think he was forced out from leadership. And when that happened, it was like a domino effect of people going, well, yeah, I'm not happy about this shit either. And I'm not happy about this. And I don't like how you guys do this. And so they had what they called a reconstruction. And it basically where everybody went back through Bible studies and there were confessions. It was just a whole thing. And at the same time that that was all happening, Sean and I had decided that we wanted to move to North Carolina. And we've been talking about it for a while, moving. I missed the East Coast. I missed it desperately. I missed the seasons. San Diego is boringly beautiful. It really is just boringly beautiful. Yeah, I'm not sure what they pay the why they pay the weather people. I mean, it's like, hey, welcome to San Diego. It's going to be a beautiful mid 70s today and tomorrow and the next day after that. Have a great day. I'm not sure why they paid them. I just don't know. It was gorgeous all the time. It just hardly ever rained at all. All the water's imported. Water is very expensive there because there is no water. And yeah, so like here, you go down the grocery aisle and it's like sodas. There's sodas here, and you might have this little water section. We had the whole row, both sides, water. And out in front, this is a real.
Wow.
There's no water in San Diego, so out in front of the stores, and the water is so horrible because they have to treat it so much. And like,
Yeah, because it's like close to Mexico. So for those of you at home, here's what I learned because I went and visited San Diego. And number one, there's a little island out
Coronado.
not far from San Diego, Coronado, where Navy SEALs train. And But apparently, the water is so close to Mexico and they just dump their sewage into the water that now all the water in the ocean by San Diego is just basically sewage water. And even these Navy SEALs who are trying to defend us and be really great, they end up getting like horrible sicknesses from training in that
Yeah,
water.
I used to dive in it.
Just interesting.
I wanted to move to North Carolina. We had already visited and found out we really liked the area around Cary and Apex. And then we were thinking about selling our house, and then one night, it was about 10 o'clock at night, we're sitting on the couch and we hear, and I looked at him, I said, "Is that a gun? Should we be on the floor?" And then the shooting stops and we hear slamming doors and a car peel out. That was the road out in front of our house. And then I'm getting up to call the police, and we see helicopter lights. And there's helicopter lights, and then the police come and knock on our door. And when I open up the door, there's another cop, and he's doing this with his flashlight on the side of the house. And he's asking me what we heard, and I told him what we heard. And I said, "Excuse me," I said, "but what is he doing?" And he's looking for bullet holes, man. That was the side where my son slept. And
Oh,
I just thought, I can't do this.
and this is like Cary or
San Diego.
Apex?
No, this
Like
is
where
San
is
Diego.
this? Oh, San Diego. Okay.
No, this is San Diego. And so that was when we decided, all right, we're putting the house up now. Let's go. Let's go. And then we ended up in Apex, North Carolina. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's how that happened.
Wow. Wow, that's fascinating. Okay. And what were you doing for work these days?
At that point, when I moved here, where I ended up was working for a produce acquisition and distribution company called L&M Companies, and I was in the AP department.
And then what happened?
I was put in charge of there was one business. We had satellite offices, and I was working in headquarters, and one of the satellite offices was down in New Mexico, and they were considered the black sheep of the company. And they're like, "Deidre, you take them." And so I took over, and they were very suspicious of me. Who are you? Who are you? And I was trying to figure out why were they the black sheep? What was going on? Well, I built up a relationship with them, found out that the reason that there was so much animosity between them and the headquarters was because nobody ever took the time or bothered to learn how to say their names. And all of them, English was a second language, and they just would not pronounce their names correctly. And they just decided, well, I'm just going to call you Jackie, or I'm just going to call you Sue, instead of saying their real names. And so all I did was learn their names and say them properly. And I learned some Spanish. I didn't know any Spanish before then, and I learned some Spanish so I could speak to them. And I found out that the salesperson there was doing some things that were very illegal, actually illegal, like internationally illegal. So I went to the boss and told him about that, and they weren't going to do anything. And I got very disenfranchised by this, and I did what any very eagerly English writer would do, and I started writing an underground newspaper. I do not recommend this. I do not recommend writing an underground newspaper in your corporation that you work for. And I did. It was very funny. They had their own newsletter that.
Did you publish this
Yeah,
or
well,
you just wrote it?
I wrote it and I distributed it. I had my own distribution channel, and so they had their own. It was called what was it called? Something grapes. Anyway, I can't remember, and so I called mine sour grapes. So, like, my boss was one of the people it got distributed to. I mean, she just thought it was hilarious, and it was very funny. And I just told little stories about things that were going on in the office. It entertained me very, very much. until the day that I got called into HR. And yeah, HR was there with my boss. And she was just like, you can't. And I didn't tell on her. I didn't tell her. You've been one of my, I didn't, I was just like, oh, okay, this is the end of that. So lost my job, but that's how I got into sales. I ended up getting I thought,
The sour grapes turned into juice.
yeah. And so I ended up working for a company that did cold calls. So they cold called for companies. So big companies with outside sales teams, would hire us to make phone calls into companies and qualify leads. And then we'd hand off the leads to the sales reps. And so that's what I did. I made cold calls. I was a cold caller.
And cold calling was okay, even though you had to because you had this people trying to say what are you doing with your face when you're little? And then there was this kind of a little bit of a view of you're not necessarily trying to be out in front of people, but yet cold calling is just a phone
Just a
call.
phone call.
That alleviated some of the being out there sort of fears, and you just did it anyway?
It did. It was very educational. I was very good at it. And then I thought, well, because I'm never satisfied. I just have to learn more, do more. And so I went to my boss and I'm like, this is a great service. We do a great job. I'd like to sell it. I'd like to sell it. And she said, well, get some sales training. Sure. And so I went and I got some sales training. And then I realized, so I went on my first big sales call. I'd done a bunch of different little sales. And then I ended up getting, through LinkedIn, I ended up getting an interview with, or a sales talk conversation with one of the VPs with Boyd Bell and Howe. And I walked in. I thought I was just meeting with the VP, just the VP, no problem.
Yeah.
And I've got my sales presentation. I'm all set. And he's like, hey, we're going to go and meet in this other room. Oh, okay. So I walk in and there's 15 people sitting around this table. I was so scared. Immediately, I was just shaking and it was horrible. And somehow I ended up getting that contract. I don't know how because I don't remember the presentation, but evidently I did well enough. I ended up with that deal and I thought, I need to learn how to be up in front of people. So I joined Toastmasters to try and get over my fear. And then I went from that to, hey, how about I wonder if I could produce my own radio show. So I ended up getting a radio show with WCOM in Chapel Hill, Carsboro. And I had my own show called 3 Steps Forward. And I interviewed people. Every week I interviewed somebody from North Carolina and somebody from around the world. And I did that for a year. And that was fascinating. Taught me a lot about how everybody is just a person. There's nothing, these people that I sat and admired and thought were untouchable. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it's just a person. It's just a person.
Yeah.
We're all just people. I was interviewing people that were on TV and they were being brought in as experts on different programs. And I was interviewing them. And so it was fun. I enjoyed that. But it really taught me a lot and got me up in front of people. And then I became a speaker.
How did you get the radio show?
So it's community radio. So I just went in and I proposed what I wanted to do. And they said, sure, come in for training. And my training was, I walked in and the guy that was leaving's like, okay, you're coming on next. I'm like, yeah, but I need training. And he's like, oh, well, this is on, this is off, this is this. And then he walked out. That was my training. So it was definitely a training by fire. But
wow.
Yeah, and so I had that show and that was fun. First couple of days were hard, but then it was a lot of fun.
Okay. And then you got into speaking.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened?
I spoke in a lot of different places. I ended up starting my own company. Before that, because I had gotten this big contract, I went back to the person who had trained me. And I said, you're awesome. Because I lost the job after I got that big contract and my boss was like, oh, don't bring any more big contracts in because I'm going to have to get a bigger building. And I don't want that. So I went back to the
So,
sales guy and I was like, "You're really good. And what you teach is really good." And I love the fact that it was ethical sales and no manipulation, no tricks, no gimmicks. And I loved that. And I thought that was really cool. And I said, "Look, I'd like to work with you." And he's like, "Well, I'm not hiring." And I said, "Well, how about if I work for you for free for a month? I'll work for you for free. And then you can decide whether you want me to stay or not." So I ended up working with him for several years. I learned a lot. I ended up developing a program for teaching sales using video. But my business partner was like, "YouTube's a fad." So I was like, I don't think it is. So I'm going to put this together and start teaching it. And then we came up with a deal that whatever programs I created, I could take my intellectual property with me as long as I left a copy for him to
wow.
sell. So, which was fine with me. I was just happy to have my intellectual property. And
Yeah.
so after a while, I thought, I want to do this all by myself. And so that was when I got out on my own and I started my own company, and I started a company called The Buzz Builder.
Okay. So then what happened?
Oh my gosh, having your own business. And you just grow so much. And I grew a ton. And in my growing and in all the networking I did, I mean, I spoke at all the chambers. Um, and I spoke at community colleges, and I ended up speaking to the National Association of Professional Organizers up in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh,
So I was
wow.
doing a lot of speaking and growing. And my husband wasn't growing and didn't understand how I was growing. And I felt very much like one day I was trying to picture it in my head. And I felt very much like I had been a bird in a cage for a really long time. And now the cage door was open and I had been flying around, and I felt like every time I flew that my husband would just grab me and clip one of my wings. And and that's how it felt, and it was really discouraging and frustrating. And so yeah, so at 18 years I was on my way to go get a card for our 18th wedding anniversary, and I remember thinking, 18 years, I don't think I can do this for another 18. In fact, I know I can't. And it was such a sinking feeling because I come from a divorced family. My parents were divorced. My grandmother had been divorced. Everybody I knew was divorced. And I didn't want that to be my story. And I realized in that moment that it was probably going to be my story. I went home and I told my husband we need couples therapy. And he's like, "No, we're smart. We can figure this out." And our divorce was finalized the day after our 20th wedding anniversary. But by
Interesting.
then, I was in love with my wife. This
This
is
is
a
seriously
crazy
fascinating
story.
and I'm loving.
My
But
life is
it's
a crazy story.
but
Mm,
I think it's an awesome
mm,
story that you're like your life is full of little bits of twists and turns that have helped you to become the awesome person that you
oh,
are
yeah, thank you.
now.
Yeah, I love the direction that my life is in now. I've always enjoyed the direction. I haven't necessarily enjoyed parts of the ride, but I've always been excited about
Yeah.
the next thing. What is the next thing?
So somewhere along the way, you realize there's this nice girl conditioning
Mm,
had been part of the story that you had been playing or allowing people to see for quite some time. And in your growth and your own ability to like fly freely without your wings being clipped, you realize, you know what? I'm gonna let that go.
Yeah,
Um,
it
Tell a little
wasn't
bit about that.
until so my wife and I got married. We moved down to Florida. We were living in Palm Bay, Florida. And when I was down in Palm Bay, Florida, I ended up going through menopause. And if you haven't been through menopause, for anybody listening, it makes you feel like you're losing your damn mind. And I was telling an older friend of mine who had gone through menopause. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I felt like I was losing your mind. my mind. She's like, that's because you were. Didn't you know? Didn't anybody tell you? No, nobody told me that that's what happens when you go through menopause. I didn't know that. And so on top of that, my mask fell off. I didn't know at the time I was neurodivergent. I didn't know. I didn't know that when you go through menopause, your mask falls off. It just blows up and into pieces, and you don't know. I didn't know how to operate without my mask. I didn't know how to put it back together. I didn't know how to put it back on. And I was an emotional mess. My nervous system was shot, and I didn't know what to do. And so I started reaching for things that I never thought I'd reach for because I had been through therapy. I mean, I'd been through so much therapy, so many therapists. And I've had some interesting names for therapists, right? I had Dr. Worm, Dr. Hertz, and my therapist right now is Dr. Payne. So you can't make this shit up, right? You can't make this shit up. So anyway, so I've been through a lot of therapy. I had read so many self-help books. Again, voracious reader. Through so many self-help books. I've been through coaches, and yet still here I was, falling apart. And my brain telling me, you're stupid, or what's wrong with you? And my mental brain going, well, no, you're really smart. You're smart. Why are you thinking these things? And I couldn't change the thoughts that I was hearing, even though I'd had all of these years of therapy. And so I started reaching for something I never would have before, which was woo. I thought, well, nothing else has worked, so I'm going to do woo. Again, a god I didn't believe in. So woo was my new god.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned about somatics. I learned about how you can reprogram your brain. And I thought, well, I'm gonna program it to things I wanted to say. And so I worked with a hypnotherapist, and I worked with her, and I said, I want to think different things. And so she created a hypnotherapy tape for me. I learned about solfeggio frequencies and about how they actually align up with chakras, and then can align up with different things that you want to work on in yourself, and that you can utilize the frequencies to help things to be activated more quickly. And it changed my life. But the nice girl thing came right after that. I was in my early 50s, and I was talking to my stepfather, who's, I believe very strongly, is a narcissist. And he said something to me, and immediately everything inside, it was like programming. It was like all of this programming just kicked in, and suddenly I was subservient and small. All of these amazing things I'd done in my life, all the space I had taken up, and in front of this man, I became really small. And I thought, what is this? What is this? And he said I wasn't being nice. And there was a part of me that just felt so crushed by that, because I had grown up always being one of the nicest women in the room. And that moment, it did something to me, and I thought, there's got to be, that's not right, because I'm a really kind person. I'm a very, very kind, I'm a thoughtful person. I'm very, very thoughtful, and I'm very empathetic. And here's this person telling me that I'm not nice, and what a horrible person I am, and what a horrible example I am. And I realized that there was subconsciously, I believed him, that subconsciously I was still under that, needing to be nice for other people, that I needed that badge. And that was when I thought, wow, I've got to make a delineation between being nice and being kind. And I don't need to be nice, because nice is nice to me at that point, kind of like the good girl. There are some people that grew up, yo, you're such a good girl. Well, for me, it was nice. And so, that whole nice thing was, to me, it's all about outside validation. You're validating that I'm nice. I can only be nice because you're telling me that. So, but kind to me was a switch. Instead of focusing outward, instead focusing on, okay, I love me. I love me more than the validation you're going to give me. I love me. I protect me. So here are my boundaries. And my boundaries are for me to enforce, not for you. That's not your problem until I tell you that's my boundary. And then if you cross it, we're going to have a problem. So it really put me in a different place where I was getting validation from myself rather than validation from outside. And that was when I came up with the acronym for nice and kind. So nice is not in conscious existence, because then you're just running by the program that you've had. And it just matched up with my life, in my 50s, realizing I was still being run by a program that was in my head. And so kind is keeping integrity and necessary defiance. So when I have my own boundary and I've told you my boundary and you step over it, well, then you're going to experience necessary defiance, because it's necessary for me to protect myself and to keep my boundaries in place and intact because I love myself more than I need your validation. So that's where that came from. It came very late, but I think it took all of those things to happen for it to happen because I'd been in a patriarchal marriage, a religious marriage, because I had been in a controlled religion, because I grew up with a family that was all about following the rules and, children shouldn't be heard. And very much I needed the straight A's and I needed the validation. I craved it. I absolutely craved it. But I was trained that way.
And so then you have this revelation, realization, you know what? I'm actually good.
Mm-hmm.
I am good to my core, and I don't care what you think about me. That's your
Yeah.
business. I'm not going to go pretend to try to do something for you to say I'm nice or you to say I'm fitting in. You remove the mask, and now you have this message. And then now that's one of the things that you help people with and share. And one of the messages from stages, but like tell a little bit more, like, and how did this transform into the ways you help people now?
Well, I realized as I was going through it that perfectionism, self sabotage, and imposter syndrome all stemmed from needing outside validation. And that was when I thought, wow, really, if you really look at it, it's a matter of helping women to understand the nice girl training that they've had. If they understand the nice girl training they've had and then utilize these methodologies to move away from that and to stop being run by routines and instead have sovereignty and ownership of who they are and recognition that they don't need to be inside of these systems to be successful, the systems of thinking. I realized it was all tied together. And so I thought, well, I don't help people with self sabotage. I help them with nice girl training, which fixes self sabotage, which fixes, perfectionism. Because that's all perfectionism is, right? You're trying to get it perfect because you need it to be perfect for someone else so that you can get that validation back. So then I thought, wow, I want to teach this all the time rather than just behind my camera, because I was a videographer at the time. And I thought, I want to teach this. I think this needs to be taught everywhere. I think this is something women need to be aware of. Now, and there's a lot of women that are aware. There's a lot of women that don't, that have moved past this at that point. But for somebody who has had some of the issues and gone through some of the things I've gone through, and then coming out, oh my gosh, coming out of the closet and then losing, I mean, just instantly within 24 hours, losing 300 people, 300 connections on Facebook, having that
What?
kind of rejection and judgment placed upon you for what? For being me? Yeah, that was hard. So it's something I feel very strongly that for whatever reason I've been put in this place to have gone through all of those things: a high control religion, a high control family, narcissism, a high control marriage, and then coming out of the closet. All of those things were very big things to go through. And so, for whatever reason, I've had those experiences. So, why not it just feels very much like this is something I am called to do, to be able to get that message out to people and help women to overcome stuff that was just incredibly difficult for me.
Mm. So, how do people find you? How do they work with you now? If this is something that's resonated with some people listening, how can they learn more and work with you?
So my website is deidrebeacham.com, and I have a workshop that I do once a month. It's called Visible Now. That is available on that website. I also have something that I call the Nice Girl Index, where you can go in and you can take a self-assessment, and at the end of it, it'll not only tell you a little bit more about yourself and where you stand in your healing journey out of niceness, not into meanness, but into kindness. Right? And I'm creating a group right now. I've been doing a lot of one-on-one, and my I remember going through it at the time and being very frustrated that I couldn't afford the help I wanted. And so I am currently actually actively pursuing a job that will help me to pay my bills and then have a group that I can do at a lower cost because I wouldn't have to rely on it to for me to have a living. And yeah, so I'm starting a group.
That's beautiful.
Thank you.
And now, from this vantage
Hmm.
point, how do you define authentic success for you?
Oh, for me. Wow. Well, I think that the ability for me to be myself and have this conversation with you and not have another voice inside of my head going, okay, can you say that right thing? Is that the thing you're supposed to be saying? Is it, did you just curse? Did you curse 3 times? How many times did you curse on this? What are people thinking about you? To not have that voice is so
Yeah.
beautiful. To be able to just sit here and be authentically myself and not be concerned about whether some people are going to like me or not. I know some people aren't going to like me. I'm okay with that. But the more authentic I can be, and that's what I strive for, is to be as authentic as possible to whatever comes to me, that's what I'm speaking out, that I'm not filtering and hyper fixating on, am I saying it perfectly? The more I can do that, the more I can reach the people I'm supposed to reach. And so that to me is authentic success, is authentically being myself, because the more I can do that, the more I can be earnest and honest about the shitstorm I've lived through, that I'll be able to, something in my story will trigger with somebody and go, oh my gosh, she's the person I've been looking for. And it's not because I've done some sales pitch, but because they want that. They want that same thing, to not have that voice that's always judging, to not have that voice that's always saying, well, you have to do things this way or that way. And again, not to be a radical rogue, right? But truly healing. And when I say that, I'm talking about radical self-acceptance, radical self-love, radical forgiveness, radical self-forgiveness. And in those things, you can get to a place where you not only love yourself so deeply that you protect yourself, but you also get to a point where you can see things in other people that you didn't realize before, and love people. Like, I love my stepfather. He doesn't understand that. I love my stepfather. I don't want to be near him, but I can still love him and appreciate who he is and the fact that he doesn't understand himself and that he doesn't see himself the way I see him. But I can still love and appreciate him for who he is. He takes wonderful care of my mom. He takes fabulous care of my mom. And I don't need to be in his presence to love and appreciate him, because if I am in his presence, I'm not going to love and appreciate him.
Mm. I am just so in awe of your beautiful story. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing more about your journey, about your definition of authentic success, and for you just kind of living into who you are and sharing your beauty and your gifts in the world. I'm fortunate that we've gotten to know each other.
I
We
know.
see
I
each
love
other
it. I
at
love it.
the. I'm I'm just excited to see and cheer you on in this new phase and continuing to share your message with the world. But thank you for being on the podcast and your
Thank
story.
you. I feel very honored. I'm honored to have met you. Like I told you, one of my new favorite, best people. And it was very entertaining. This was the most interesting podcast I've been on, and some very interesting questions. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I get people like, I've never been asked that question. I'm just following my
Yeah.
curiosity because I'm genuinely fascinated with how people, like, what people have gone through and how people have gotten to today. And then what? And then what's next? Like, I'm just literally fascinated. But thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Your Next Success with Dr. Carolyn Sengel. Remember, authentic success is yours to define and includes aligning your career to support the life you want.